I was born to preach the gospel. I was born to preach the gospel. I was born to preach the gospel. And I sure do love my job. Yeah. I was born to preach the gospel. I was born to preach the gospel. I'm born to preach the gospel. And I sure do love my job. Yeah. Yes, I really love my job. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. Oh, I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. Yes, I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. Get firmly rooted. So let's get firmly rooted. Let's get firmly rooted. So let's get firmly rooted. Oh, I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. Let's get firmly rooted. Firmly rooted. Let's get firmly rooted. Yeshua, 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 Yeshua. I'm a disciple that makes disciples that makes disciples. We are disciples that make disciples that make disciples. We are disciples that make disciples that make disciples. We are disciples that make disciples that make disciples. Let's get firmly rooted. Firmly rooted.
Good morning. Happy Thursday. It is Pastor G coming to you from Greendale, Indiana, where we're in a heat wave. And I think you guys in Michigan are too, or probably the rest of the country to that extent. But anyway, doing all we can to keep cool. Hope you guys are well. We are looking today at Mark chapter 6, verses 47 through 52. And before we get into that, just want to say hi to a few folks. Vivian Davis, good morning. Looks like, you got some showers going on in your area. Good morning, Bert Reggiani. And good morning, Brian Vlamming, and several others on board as well. So what I want to do today is really kind of focus on the heart of what Jesus desires for us, and that we find our rest in him. And you guys, I feel like this is a really important message for us because so often we can think that, hey, rest means just taking a vacation, or it means, just watching TV or whatever. But Jesus has a very specific rest, and we need to find it in him. That's the only rest that will truly satisfy us. How many of you can relate? You've gone on vacation and you come back and you're just as stressed as when you left, right? Okay, that's certainly been me too. So we need to find our rest in him. And I think he shows us how to do that here in our passage for today. So I'm really excited to dig in with you. Alice, good morning. Steve Giroux, good morning. So here we go. I'm going to share the screen here so everybody can see, and then we'll get going. All right. So Mark chapter 6, verses 47 through 52. So what I want to do first is sort of go back a little bit, get sort of the context here. Jesus, back in verse 30, he had specifically told his disciples, "Come away by yourselves to a desolate place and rest a while." Okay, so that was before the feeding of the 5,000. That was before our passage today. And Jesus, he knew they had been doing a lot of ministry. He knew that their bodies needed rest. They needed to get alone, and get alone specifically in a desolate place. That's where Jesus would always go, to be alone with his Father. So it wasn't just, again, physical rest, but it was actual spiritual rest. Get alone with God. We're going to go away by yourselves to a desolate place where you can have that quiet time with your heavenly Father. Okay. But now listen to this. Listen to this. It says, "For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat." Okay. So that means that now they are going to do the only thing they can do to get away from the crowds, and that is what? Get in a boat. Get in a boat and get out of Dodge. Okay. So now it says, "And they went away in the boat to a desolate place by themselves." So they weren't initially going to get into a boat, but they had to. And it says, "Now many saw them going and recognized them." Oh, isn't that great? "And they ran there on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them." So where is there? That's Bethsaida. So they're over in Capernaum area. They go around, they go the 8 miles. The disciples only have to go 4 miles on the boat, but they run 8 miles, get there ahead of them. Okay, and it says, "When he went ashore," meaning Jesus, "he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things." Well, what happened to the rest? What happened to providing that for your disciples? Jesus has a plan in mind. He knows all things, and he allows, for this reason, he allows the people to break that rest that was given to his disciples. Okay, that now we're going to fast forward. So now we get to our passage for today. So Jesus goes on to feed the 5,000, and now, okay, it says that immediately he made his disciples get into a boat. Okay, this is verse 45, "and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd." So he's, again, just being a good, loving father here. He's taking care of the crowd. He's, again, I believe he's saying, "You go get your rest." Okay, so he hasn't forgotten about them. He hasn't forgotten that they need rest. Okay, but now look at what happens. Again, we're going to get a second interruption to their rest. All right. And here's where we pick up today. So they're on their boat, and they're in the boat. They're headed for rest. But it says, verse 47, "And when evening came, the boat was out on the sea, and he was alone on the land." Okay. So he, obviously meaning Jesus. "And he saw that they were making headway painfully, for the wind was against them." You know, this again, this is very important, you guys, because I think it reminds us that in Philippians, how we learned that Jesus, he set aside so much of his of what he could have claimed, right? But he did that. He humbled himself, taking the very nature of a servant. Doesn't mean he lost any of his divinity. But I believe here, something like this, this is clearly an example where he has to react to something that's happening. He saw that they were making headway painfully. Well, if he had allowed himself, I believe that he knows all things. We know that, obviously, he knows the future. But had he allowed himself the full knowledge of this, right, then I don't think we would see verse 48 in the way that we're reading it, right? He's seeing that they were making headway painfully. So he's making an adjustment. He's sort of course correcting here. "For the wind was against them." Okay. He had sent them off in to get this rest. Okay. But remember, God uses all things for our good. And about the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. He meant to pass by them. But when they saw him walking on the sea, they thought it was a ghost and cried out, for they all saw him and were terrified. But immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I." Okay, that phrase, "it is I," in the Greek, it's ego eimi, which means literally, I am. So they would have heard, "Take heart, I am." Where else have we heard, "I am"? Well, of course, we think about the burning bush. We think about the words that God gave to Moses, right? Moses asked, "Who shall I say sent me?" I am that I am. And so I think it's a, a disservice that our modern translations translate this as "it is I think it's very clear that Jesus said, "I am." But regardless, Jesus is now telling them, do not be afraid. Okay. And here's really, this is the crux of all of this. So how many of you, and I'm asking you now, have you ever been in a situation where you have felt maybe stressed or overwhelmed just by life, maybe bills are piling up, whatever, but then suddenly then another situation, maybe your child gets sick, right? Or maybe there's a natural disaster or storm or something like that. And suddenly what it does is it you're no longer thinking about the stress you had. That becomes really small. Well, I've certainly had that happen to me. To then hear a reassuring voice, maybe it's a police officer or EMT or whatever, give sort of that consolation of saying, "Don't be afraid, it's going to be okay." All right. That has a tremendous impact on us. It has a tremendous calming effect. And I've witnessed this. There's been times in my life where, again, I've been stressed out about something, but then a greater challenge arises. And then I've heard that voice of assurance or that voice of comfort. And what happens? Well, then I'm no longer worried about either situation. I think that's what's going on here. I think in this moment, you guys, Jesus is giving them their rest, because we learn afterwards that he got into the boat with them, the wind ceased. They make it to the other side, but we still don't read about any desolate places. We don't read about any rest, any physical rest that they're getting. I think this is the rest that they are receiving, and this is spiritual rest. Okay. This for whatever problems they were having before, whatever rest they thought or felt they needed, now Jesus, he has allowed this greater storm to usurp, all right, the stresses that they were having before. But now he's coming to them in the midst of that storm. He's rebuking the wind of the waves. He says, "Do not be afraid." And I believe that enabled these disciples to go on and have a rejuvenated ministry. So that is a theory. Don't equate this with the gospel truth. I'm just simply pointing out. I'm trying to reconcile how Jesus keeps sending these disciples to get rest, and yet they don't actually get it in the way that we would expect. And I think he has done something beautiful here. I think he has opened up a greater rest. And that's just how I see it. Love to get your thoughts. Let me know, send me an email or give me a call. I'd love to hear what you think about that. Finally, these last two verses, verse 52 says, "For they did not understand about the loaves, but their hearts were hardened." That's kind of a confusing verse. To me, kind of comes out of nowhere. But all that to just say, I think we've got a real challenge on our hands at this point with the disciples' lack of faith. And it's not, the Greek says that they're, it's almost points to rebellion here. So but that's another message for another time. I didn't want to get into that, but just know that these disciples very much are in need not only of rest, but also in need of having their hearts softened towards Jesus. So there it is. You all have a wonderful day. Have a firmly rooted day. I pray that someone will see Jesus in us today. I'll be back at, let's see, in just about 15 minutes for prayer. If you can stick with us then, that's great. If not, I will catch you next week. And tomorrow we've got Living Sent with Aaron Jackson. So God bless you all. Peace to you. Thanks.